to the top of the hour. And I need to have that turned on, but then I have to turn it off again because it will kind of double make noise while I'm talking. All right, and I should be able to do video today, at least as we start here. If my internet gets a little wonky and slow, we will turn that off. We are going to be recording today's session, so let me go ahead and get that started as well. And everyone should be able to see. Thank you, lady, for letting us know it's being recorded. I love that. You all should be able to see slides as well. So in the Q&A box, if you could just let me know if for any reason you cannot see my slides, let me know or hear me. I want to make sure that audio and everything is working well. So just as a reminder for those of you who have just joined us, you will receive a copy of the recording of this automatically, and that will come, I believe it comes within the next 24 hours, so it should be pretty much right away. I am Hallie Crawford. I'm a certified career coach. Our company is based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all today to talk about navigating the changing workplace and figuring out if you're in the right fit. Have you made a change during the Great Resignation that maybe you regret a little bit or not so sure about, and thinking about what the right next steps are for you, given so much has changed, obviously, due to COVID and there are recession concerns, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for today. So let's go ahead and dive in. So just quick background about me. I've been coaching and training since 2002. There's a lot more gray hair going on underneath here that you just can't see, lucky for me. I have an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois, and we have a great team of fantastic resume writers, coaches, etc. And our goal is to help people get in the right job, be in the right career fit, and also be really focused, though, on what changes they need to make over time in their career to make sure that they're strategically planning and being proactive about their career path in the long run. Because too many people we have found, and I am guilty of this too, we get kind of complacent. We're getting a paycheck, things are going well, and sometimes we tend to just leave our career on autopilot. And given everything that's happened in the past few years, and now with concerns about a possible recession, we all know that we can't have it be on autopilot. We really need to be proactive about charting our course and making sure our career path stays on track in a way that we want it to. So we've got lots of different concerns, and as I've already said, changes in the workplace. We've had clients tell us with this whole remote working thing that we've been doing for the past several years, and I know now a lot of people are going back into the office. We've changed our minds about what's important to us. We had some clients tell us that they did not like working remotely at all. It didn't play to their strengths. They felt solo and alone and lonely in some cases. And for example, they realized their coworkers were a critical piece to their fulfillment. Other clients said the complete opposite. Like, how do I tell my boss that I never want to go back and, see her in person? I want to work remotely forever. And as a result, so many people, we changed how we feel about what motivates us and what makes us feel connected to our jobs and engaged, et cetera. And so one of the things that we want you to think about as you're thinking about what's important to you now and how things are changing and navigating it is consider how satisfied you've been with your career path for the past several years, but specifically like pre-COVID versus post-COVID, so that you can start to think about what has changed, what is like a temporary thing for you versus what has been like a long-term dissatisfaction, to let you know what kind of larger change you may need to make. So what we're going to talk about today is why it's important to be satisfied in your job and like be in the right fit, regardless of, what's changing in our work world. 8 red flags to know if you're in the wrong job and kind of doing the wrong thing in the first place, defining fulfillment first and why we feel that's so important to look at right out of the box. And we'll show you our ideal career model as well, because what we assert is that if you start with you Stuff's going to change outside of us. We may change a job, we may change too quickly, and we regret that decision. A job may have been advertised to us one way, but it didn't turn out to be that way. So lots of different kind of external things can change. And what we want you to be really mindful of over time is like, okay, go back to you and what's really important to you, so that you can then say, okay, what adjustments do I need to make given everything that's gone on? For anyone who's just joined us, as a reminder, to get the recording, you will receive it automatically. You don't have to worry about any of that. And we'll show you how to set up a free strategy session as well if you've got additional questions that you want to ask us after today, and learn more about our coaching services as well. So it's really important. Our first tip here is we don't want to be like this gentleman on the screen. It's really important for us to be in the right career fit. That's, if nothing else, we've learned that kind of post-COVID with the Great Resignation and reshuffle and all that other stuff too. And studies still consistently show, and it does go up and down, obviously, but that too many people are not really engaged in their work. And what we are hearing from people more and more is that, number one, they want to feel fulfilled and engaged in their work more than ever before. They want to feel like they have a sense of accomplishment or fulfillment and like meaning or attachment to their organization. That seems to be more important to people, as well as wanting to feel like they are making a difference in some way, shape, or form. And obviously, more and more people are wanting to have a flexible schedule, more work-life balance. That's why there's this sense of that you may have heard in the media, this idea of quiet quitting, where people are focusing more on their work-life balance and not, just giving all of their soul, so to speak, to their employers. And also this concept that's been around for several years of the gig economy, where people will try to have maybe a couple of different jobs or change jobs a little bit, and be in jobs in a shorter time frame so that they can maybe jump to the next thing to get an increased salary or have that next challenge or whatever it is. And we don't have any problem with any of those things. We just want you to be thoughtful, mindful, and proactive about it. Okay. There's lots of different reasons why we get stuck kind of in the wrong fit, and why it's really important to think about what is the right fit for you in the first place. And one of the things we would suggest doing for homework is to think about, in your current career or job, why are you in it? Are you in it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? Make a list for yourself. Okay, why am I in this position? And sometimes, because we don't ask ourselves this question enough, if you just spit out the answers on a piece of paper and don't think about it too much, you might be surprised about what comes out of your mouth or your head. So we really want you to do that. Takes 5 minutes, but make a list of why you're there right now. On the right-hand side, there are lots of different reasons why our clients get stuck in the jobs that they're in. It was offered, they needed the money. That's happened to me before. Sometimes people say we're really good at their jobs, but this is not a strength that they want to leverage anymore. Sometimes, and I would say this happened during the Great Resignation enormously, is that we make a change too quickly, because it's almost like it was the popular thing to do, changing jobs for a little while there. I think it's slowing down a little bit. But a lot of people, it's kind of why they're talking about the great regret now. Okay, did you change jobs maybe too quickly without thinking about it enough? And in some cases, was the job not as advertised? That has happened to a lot of our clients too. So again, you want to think about, at least for a few minutes, about why you're in the place that you're in now, so that you know if it's something that just happened, if it was a mistake, and how you can be more proactive the next go round. Okay. 2 things we want you to think about when you're considering, okay, do I need to make a change, or is this just part of the new workplace and the new working world, and I need to suck it up and be satisfied? We would never say that people need to suck it up, but we'll show you our model to help you figure out places where you might be able to compromise and where you might not want to. But one of the things we want you to think about is to consider, how satisfied are you where you are now in your current job? If you're somewhat satisfied, like it's not like you're about to run out the door with your hair on fire, it's a really good idea in that scenario to separate what works for you at your current job and what doesn't work for you. because in a lot of cases, our clients, when they start to use our model and really think more objectively and clearly about what's going on for them, they're actually able to make more of a course correction to be satisfied versus a really dramatic change, which is what they tend to think at the beginning. I'm so unhappy that, oh, I need to make, go be a chef or something, completely different from the consultant that they are now. That's just one example of a client that we've had in the past. And if you're very unsatisfied, though, you may need to consider a larger change. But we want you to think about how unsatisfied are you with multiple aspects or areas of your job, like what's working and what's not working, so that you can start to say, okay, these are things that are inherent in this job, not just about the new working world or the new workplace. And that means I need to make an adjustment or maybe a change in my career path versus this is kind of the new reality of where we are. So what are the things that I need to do to kind of adjust to that? Okay. So if you're very unsatisfied, and I would say have been for longer than 6 months plus, then that means that you may need to make a larger change, like a career shift or not just adjustment change. And if you're somewhat satisfied, it hasn't been that long, and there are some elements of what you're doing that you still like and some that you don't, you may want to consider a course correction. Don't be more dramatic about it than you need to, because obviously it is easier to make a course correction versus a huge shift. It's usually less dramatic, as I've already said here, if you take a look at this next slide, but you can be engaged and fulfilled. Part of what you have to think about is what are the things that are key priorities for you and what are the things that you can compromise on a little bit? Because look, we want you to have the right perspective about this and be realistic about it. There are always going to be things that we have to compromise on to a certain extent. So for example, if your current employer is insisting that you have to come in a couple of times a month in person or whatever it is, but the rest of your job is really good for you, then that's something that you're probably just going to have to compromise on and deal with it and find ways to be engaged there and, handle it. Okay. So what we're going for here on the bottom of this next slide here on the right is you want to be saying to yourself that I'm not looking for perfection, because honestly, there isn't going to be perfection in any single job. I love what I do and I feel like it's the absolute right thing for me to be doing. But there are still things that I'd rather not have to do and that I don't like. And sure, some days I wake up and wish I'd won the lotto. I mean, just like anybody else. But what you want to go for is that the good parts about your job or your career path so far outweigh those things that are frustrating or not as enjoyable for you that you barely notice those things. You can deal with them. You can compromise there because the rest of it is so good. That's the balance that we want you to strike, regardless of, the workplace and how things are changing. You can identify, okay, what's going to be kind of anywhere, and I just have to work through this versus what can I compromise on? Let's look at number 2 and our second kind of piece of advice today, and our 8 red flags that we have to know if you are really in the wrong fit and you definitely need to make some sort of change or adjustment, changing positions at your current organization, for example, or a larger change into a different industry or role. So there's 8 red flags that we always help clients kind of look out for. If you're dreading getting out of bed every single morning, and it's not just like the common Monday morning blues that a lot of us will have every once in a while, then that means that you need to do something more dramatic and make some kind of change, because we don't want you feeling that way all the time. Number 2, if you feel like your work relationships and your performance is suffering for whatever reason, if you're, working solely remotely and that's just not working for you, for example, that is something that you need to do something about and find a place that you can go into the office. Or even if, let's say, you love your job, but it's solely remote and that part isn't working for you, can you do something else? Like make sure that you go to lunch with a friend or a colleague every single day. Do you need to find like I can't think of it, but the collaborative like workspaces that you can rent that space and maybe ask your company to pay for that for you so that you can get that engagement and kind of social interaction a little bit more. Number 3 is if you don't get any joy or satisfaction from your job and it just feels like blah, then that is a huge red flag, because we want you to feel, you don't have to feel passionately about what you do. Not everyone insists on that, and we totally understand that. But most people want to feel some sense of satisfaction or accomplishment, or they did something good or useful that day at a bare minimum. That's a big deal. Number 4 is if you've slacked off and you have little to no motivation. That's a huge red flag that you need to make some sort of change and figure out how to get motivated. Is it working with colleagues a little bit more collaboratively? Is it that you need to work on the harder tasks earlier in the morning because in the afternoon you go through that kind of slump, for example? That is me. And so I have to pay attention to how I schedule and manage my days. Number 5 is if you feel like you have to become someone else at work, like you can't be truly yourself. Now, we know that we all have a professional persona and we're supposed to behave professionally. So I'm not saying let it all hang out personally too here. But if you feel like you're being inauthentic, in any way, shape, or form, like you can't honor your values at your job, your values are not aligned with the organization, for example, or you can't just be yourself, then that's a really big problem, because that's going to wear on you for sure over time. Number 6, if your job doesn't make use of your talents and strengths, and those talents and strengths that you really want to be using at this point in your career, that is going to be a big problem. And number 7 and 8 are if you spend most of your time complaining about your job, big problem there. And if you regularly fantasize about quitting, being fired, or let go, that's a huge red flag, obviously. I chuckle a little bit, even though it's not funny, because most of us would never want to be fired. I mean, that's not an ideal situation. But we actually did have a client once who we got on the phone with her. Our coach had talked with her just the last week. And in the first couple of seconds, the coach said, you sound really good today. What's going on? What happened? And this client actually said, I got fired and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. She was having a really hard time quitting and leaving without having something else lined up. And we totally understand that. That is not something that we would ever recommend as someone's first choice. But for this particular person, it was the best thing that ever happened to her, because it forced her to do what she needed to do to go find the right job, which she was able to do with our help. So these are our 8 red flags. If you have, and we'll go to the next slide here, actually, if you've got 1 or 2, you may just be going through a rough patch. And we want you to think about our career model here and reevaluate how things are going, see what kind of changes you might be able to make where you are, and reevaluate things in 3 months. We always want people to look in their own backyard first, because obviously that's the easiest thing. In order for you to make a move, unless, again, you're about to walk out the door and you've already tried everything, we want you to try things where you are now if you possibly can. If you've got 3 or 4 red flags, you're probably not in the right career path, but you may be closer to your ideal than you realize. Write down what works for you on the left-hand side column of a piece of paper and what doesn't work to get started to evaluate objectively what's going on, when do you need to make a change, how quickly do you need to make a change. And if you have 5 or more red flags, it's definitely time to make a change. People will be asking us and are asking us now, understandably, as we get into the end of the year, holiday time, as well as what if, we go into a more dramatic recession. We still want people to be looking out there to see what is possible or feasible for them. Because even if it's not a great time for you to make a move and you really want to focus now, for example, on saving money, staying where you are so you can see how things play out with your company, maybe in your industry a little bit more. There is no harm at any time in just checking out the job boards, seeing what's out there, seeing if there is anything that's more appealing, getting your resume up to date and your LinkedIn so that when it's time, you're ready to go. You know what you want, which is why we're here today talking about this. And you're also ready with your materials to go ahead and conduct that job search. So being prepared is the key, because then you can make the change or act when the time is right for you versus being behind the 8 ball. Let's look at our third tip, and this is defining fulfillment first. This is so incredibly important, obviously, given everything that we've talked about today and what we've heard from our clients about, they're demanding, so to speak, being more engaged in their work and having it be more of a fit for them in the long run. When you're thinking about the right fit for you, whether to stay or go, how bad is your career regret now? And again, how much of it is just due to the changing workforce and workplace versus, what's working for you and your company or not. There are 4 different ways to think about defining fulfillment first. Think about and journal for like 5 minutes about, what does success mean to you? What does it mean now versus like pre-COVID, for example? Think about your interests and your hobbies outside of work even. What are those things that you do either at work or outside of work where you just lose track of time and you're passionate about those things? Because even if those aren't viable career paths for you to go ahead and make a change into that necessarily, those can give you clues to what would be more fulfilling for you, which could give you ideas for possible alternative career paths or other things that you could do to make your current work more enjoyable in the meantime. Creating a vision board about your ideal day at work. What qualities would it have? A lot of our clients will do that. And the last thing that we would suggest, but also I would say the most important or most meaningful, is to think about and identify what your top 3 career values are using, for example, a peak experience exercise. This would be a moment in time or a period of time in your life personally where you felt really lit up, rocking and rolling, like things were just going so smoothly and you were really happy and lit up. And think about what was cool about that situation for you, moment or period of time, and write about that. Write about what was cool about it for you versus the details of it, because that can give you clues to what some of your possible values are that you can then say, okay, are my values being honored at this job, in the environment, how the workplace has changed, etc. And what adjustments can I make or do I need to make in order to honor those values more? If you feel like you need more help identifying your values or anything else that we're talking about today, or resume, LinkedIn, anything career, we always offer a free consult. You can ask us any questions that you have about our coaching services. Make sure that it's the right fit for you. You just email us at admin@createyourcareerpath. I would be talking with you directly so I can help you figure out what the right fit might be. And as we head into the holidays, please keep us in mind for any friends or family members, referrals that need to be happier in their jobs or figure out if they need to make a move or not, because we absolutely love what we do. Be happy to do that. Tip number 4 is to review our ideal career model. And if I had to choose anything out of what we're talking about today that I believe would be the most helpful thing, it would be taking this and saying to yourself, okay, for these 8 pieces or components of the right career fit, where is my current career path? Where has it been in the past and where do I want it to go? So the reason why this model we feel is so helpful is it helps you be more objective about what's really going on for you and kind of practical versus emotional about what's happening in your current career path. It also helps you consider all the necessary components of the right fit. And we want you to review each of the pieces step by step, one by one. And I'll show you a little bit larger here on this next slide. We start with fulfillment with our model first. And we talked about that already when we talked about values a little bit. So what would give you and what does give you the most meaning in your current career path right now? And is it on track? Like, is it working for you in the fulfillment area, so to speak? The enjoyment piece is next. We talk about enjoyment in terms of what are the tasks that you would most like to be performing in addition to the main tasks you perform. So enjoyment is kind of like icing on the cake, if you will. So fulfillment for me, for example, would be career coaching, educating people about being more authentic and fulfilled in their jobs. But guess what? I get to do webinars like this, which I love. I get to be creative by helping create the slides, but also educating people in this way in a group setting where my coaches do the one-on-one coaching now. So there are other cool things that I get to do as part of this. And we want you to feel like the majority of your day, as much as possible, you're engaged in tasks that you enjoy and also leverage your strengths. So strengths is next. We like the Strengths Finder assessment that can help you clarify what your top 5 strengths are and help you prepare for interviews as well. We have a Strengths Finder review that we do as a one-time session with our clients to test out coaching, but also get a sense of what their strengths are, whether it's preparing for an interview or just understanding what the right fit is. With your strengths, you want to think about your top 5 strengths and are you leveraging them in the right way and the majority of the time at your current job. That is what is important here. And the strengths that you actually still want to be leveraging versus ones that you're like, gosh, I'm tired of those and I want a new challenge. For education and experience, we want you to think about, are there classes in the past that I've taken that maybe I even forgot about, but I really enjoyed? And I kind of want to do a little bit more of that in this phase of my career or in how the work environment is changing. Also, same thing with experience. Think about your past work experiences that have been enjoyable for you and what are the ones that you want to leverage the most. And finally, the last 3, last but not least and least important at all, is your personality type. Are you in the right fit there? Are you more introverted or extroverted? And is your career and job and even the work environment a fit for your personality type? There's a lot to unpack there. So we really want you to think about that. And work environment is a critical piece to everything. A lot of our clients will find that at the end of the day, when they're evaluating their current career path, their work environment is one of the major problems. And so what we will tell them, if that's the case, is like, you can probably stay in your same role and maybe even in your same industry, but you need to go work at a different organization that has a different culture, maybe a different way of approaching their work. Larger or smaller organization, different types of people, etc. Those are all things related to work environment. And finally, compensation is critically important, but we don't have you think about that first, because if you brainstorm your ideas based on fulfillment and strengths and some of these other pieces first, and then narrow them down based on compensation, you'll get closer to something that actually really, truly is a fit for you versus starting with the practical right out of the box. All right, as we get close to the end of our time today, couple of things to think about. I already touched on, options or what to do during a recession or, given that it's the end of the year and people are also concerned about, recession, et cetera, and possibilities there. Things that you want to be thinking about is being attuned to and kind of reading the room of your organization and industry. Is it thriving? Is it struggling? Could it struggle if there is a recession? And the way to pay attention to this kind of stuff is to participate in industry-specific LinkedIn groups. Stay connected with your network. Read your local business chronicle. Just pay attention to what's going on in the economy so that you can realize and understand if other industries, for example, are more actively hiring. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics that is managed by the US government gives great stats and data. It's bls.gov, and I'll see if I can put that into the Q&A box while we're talking here. That can help you understand what's going on in different places in the economy and what might be good for you to be thinking about, okay? So bls.gov, and let me see this. Here we go. Oops, I put it in the wrong place. Sorry, guys. www.bls.gov. Okay, good. And hopefully you all are able to see my slides. If someone could put in the Q&A that you are, that would be great because I would feel really badly if you can't. The other thing you want to think about is to consider what else, if you are really worried about a possible recession, understandably, remember a couple of things. Number one, we do not want you to make decisions out of fear. We don't want you to say, well, I'm just going to stay in my current job for another couple of years or whatever, just because it's a paycheck. We want you to think proactively. You might say, let me stay through the end of the year and then see what happens. But don't make any decision based out of fear. Make it based out of information and being proactive. And the second thing that you can think about is to consider what else you might be happy with in your current position if you can't make a change quite at this time, and try these things out anyway. Ask your organization if There are possible changes you could make to flex time, a title change, maybe getting a bonus at the end of the year, or checking in on where that might be, or due to recession concerns, if it's not going to be the end of the year, finding out, could it be within the next, 6 months after that, based on your performance or something like that. So there are options. What we want you to understand and get is that we are all at choice at any given time. I know that things happen to us externally that we can't control, but like everyone says, I know it may sound trite, we choose how we respond to it. If you are incredibly miserable at your current job, you could quit and walk out the door. Now, that might not be the financially best or smartest thing to do. And if it's not for you, get creative and find out what you can do instead. Can you go get a certification, for example, so you can apply to a new job after the new year, for example? So get into action and being proactive mode versus being stuck in fear, so to speak. All right. As a reminder, everyone will get a copy of the recording from today. I want to thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful for you. We really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions that they want to ask after we're done today, feel free to email us. The email address is on the screen there. And we would also be happy to talk with anybody about our coaching services as well. And if it's the right thing for you to do right now or later on, or for a friend, family member, etc. Have a great day, everyone. We greatly appreciate your time, and we will see you and talk